Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. India can feel a mild sense of vindication after hearing retired Major General Mahmood Ali Durrani admitting on Indian soil that the 26/11 attacks were carried out by a terrorist organization that crossed over from Pakistan. Durrani was National Security Advisor to the Pakistani government at the time, and the statement is in line with his public admission then that Ajmal Kasab, the only terrorist captured during the attack, was from Pakistan. This is the first admission by any high-ranking Pakistani official that confirms India's stand that the Lashkar-e-Toiba plotted and executed the carnage 9 years ago. Durrani was speaking at the 19th Asian Security Conference held at the Institute of Defence Studies and Analysis on Monday. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze if Durrani's admission will change anything as far as the Mumbai terror attacks are concerned. Joining me on the program today are Bharat, Bhushan, editor, Catch News, C. Uday, Bhaskar, retired Commodore and Director of Society for Policy Studies, Shashank, former Foreign Secretary, and Singh, retired Professor, School of International Studies, JNU. Thank you so much to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Bharat, Bhushan, I'd like to start with you first. Does the statement of Durrani change anything as far as the Mumbai 26/11 attacks are concerned?
Nothing. It just changes the atmosphere in TV studios where people think something new has been said. General Durrani lost his job precisely for saying this in January 2009. So he has said nothing new. What he has said is that, yes, it was a classic transborder terrorist operation, but he has also said that he is 110% sure that the Pakistani establishment, that is the Pakistan government and the ISI, were not involved. This is what you would expect a Pakistani army general to say, and this is what was his position earlier also. I don't think it changes anything at all.
Indeed. Commodore Uday, Bhaskar, could this attack have taken place without the help of the Pakistani ISI or the Pakistani government?
Frank, that is the grey area. I would just like to endorse what Bharat has just said, which is that what General Durrani has said here in New Delhi at the Asian Security Conference is not new. This was said in the past, and perhaps we have forgotten that the then DG of the ISI, Lieutenant General Shuja Pasha at that time, when he had gone to the United States and met with the CIA officials, he had made the same observation, that this particular terrorist attack had been carried out by a group that was located in Pakistan. Actually, at that time, he went a step further. He said it also had the involvement of certain retired army officers. Perhaps some of them were retired ISI, and this is a quote from General Shuja Pasha at that time. But he said it was not our operation, meaning that it was not, again, endorsed or approved by the government or the ISI, which is similar to what General Durrani is saying. So, to that extent, I would say that as far as the way in which the statement has been made by General Muhammad Durrani here in New Delhi does not change anything substantive. But could the ISI have known about the operation? Here I want to put my head on the block and say, as a security analyst, the answer is yes. Now, there are various ways of knowing. One is to say that you officially approve it because it's come to you on a file. The second is that you are tacitly aware of it. You know, there is something called the Nelson's nod. My sense is that it was perhaps something tacit in the grey area where certain nodes within the organization knew of it, but chose to look the other way maybe, or give it a tacit wink and nod, and that is how I think the carnage in Mumbai unfolded. I think that still remains a grey area even within Pakistan, to the extent that I have seen the discourse and the various accounts and the books that have been written on the subject by retired Pakistani army officers.
Indeed. Indeed. Ambassador, the government has played down the comments of General Durrani. Was that the right way to handle the situation, or do you believe that this, the comment should have been overplayed and, something should have been made out of it?
Well, if we say that Pakistan is a democratizing country and is giving space to its retired officials to speak out a bit more openly. And knowing that the new American administration is looking for partners in Asia to go after the terrorist organizations, and particularly those affiliated in some way or the other with Daesh. So we should, perhaps at the non-governmental level, see if there is a possibility of working together with many retired people, many serving NGO thinkers, etc., those who feel that all terrorist elements, at least whatever is called the non-state actors, they should be isolated and neutralized. As far as the other part is concerned, the ISI getting involved, ISI is an institution of the government and they almost run the government as regards the Afghan policy and the Indian policy. So they are not going to come under your control immediately. It will take time. So therefore, what is important is that under this new coalition which can be built up among the Asian countries, one should work against the terrorist organizations and elements. And Durrani Sahab has at least said that Hafiz Saeed has lost his value. I am not very sure whether Durrani Sahab will be welcome back in Pakistan. Maybe there would be a price on his head. But at the same time, it is necessary to find out whatever is possible, because after all, a country of about 200 million people, we have to have some influential persons who are willing to work against the terrorists. So let us see if there is some possibility on that account. I am not saying that the government of India should in any way play it up to such an extent that it means that now Pakistan has admitted for the first time that there were people who were involved. Pakistan has always been saying that India and Pakistan should collaborate and work together against the terrorist elements and also simultaneously resolve Kashmir issue. That has been their long-standing position.
Yes.
Here what we are talking about is that a new coalition which is being built and the failure of existing institutions like NATO and all the others to deal with these issues, we have to find new solutions. And if an opening is coming up, let us examine that seriously and welcome that and find out who are all the people who can be brought in from Pakistan and from other neighboring countries to work on this.
Indeed, indeed. Professor Umar Singh, diplomatic channels and using these diplomatic channels to the fullest, is that the right way forward? Is that the only way forward?
I would say it is the right way forward. And let me remind everyone that this is not the first time Major Durrani has talked about Pakistan's involvement, as has been mentioned, and then you call it a mild vindication. I don't think it's a mild vindication. It's a full-fledged vindication of Pakistan's admission of its involvement. As far as the diplomatic channels are concerned, I think that is the right way of dealing with a neighboring country. And if we take General Bajwa's statements, which he has recently made and talked about, appreciated India's democracy, and Pakistani should learn from India's democracy that the army remains in the barracks, that I think gives some hope to India that we should now in fact resume diplomatic channels with Pakistan, though we have to be very firm about combating cross-border terrorism.
Indeed, indeed. Bharat, Bhushan, would you agree with that? Things are changing. It seems like under General Bajwa, there seems to be a milder Pakistani army, at least for the time being. Cross-border infiltration and cross-border firing or shelling has come down considerably under General Bajwa. So things might be changing in Pakistan.
Look, whether it's true that LOC firing's gone down, but that's not the point. Pakistan is under pressure. What is this pressure? It's under pressure because there's terrorism within. There are terrorist attacks. All that Pakistan is doing against terrorism started after the Peshawar school attack, where 132 or 138 students were killed. Then they had a national action plan against terrorism. Then subsequently they had Zarbea's operation on the Afpak border. And now General Bajwa is talking about operations in southern Punjab, Operation Raddul Fasad, because once again there were terrorist attacks on Sufi shrines and so on and so forth. So Pakistan is under pressure from within, and there is international pressure. what Pakistan is doing against some of the terrorists, including Hafiz Saeed, is not because it's because of India or because it wants good relations with India, which it may want, but it's doing it so under international pressure. There is an international terror financing watchdog called Financial Action Task Force, which has been putting pressure on Pakistan. It had a report in early January by its Asia Pacific group which said Pakistan wasn't doing enough to prevent financing of terrorism. And now in their last meeting in Paris, FATF has given Pakistan 90 days to cut off all finances of groups like Jamaat-ud-Dawa, Jaish-e-Mohammed and their affiliates. So there is international pressure. If it doesn't do anything, doesn't show results in these 3 months, then Pakistan stands the risk of being categorized as one of those regions where terrorist financing continues and the government is unable to do anything. So there is international pressure and there is a domestic pressure. So if Pakistan is changing and changing for better by acting as terrorists, it's because of these pressures. Whether in southern Punjab they will act against all groups or only those groups that target Pakistan like TTP, Jamaat-ul-Ahrar, or whether they would also target those groups which are used as Pakistani establishment's instruments for pushing its policy in Kashmir and keeping Kashmir destabilized remains to be seen. And whether they would stop making this distinction between, those terrorists who target Afghanistan are good, those who target India are good, and those who target the Pakistani society are bad. There's good and bad terrorist distinction. If it goes away, so much the better. But I don't think it's because of personal psychology of General Bajwa. They cannot afford to heat up the eastern border when they're engaged on the western border with the terrorists.
Indeed, indeed. I'm talking about this international pressure, Ambassador. Do you believe that China too is exerting itself on Pakistan to rein in some of these terror elements, because China too has got a considerable stake now in Pakistan, especially with the CPEC as well. So it does not want a situation where one of its citizens is killed as a result of terror strikes or terror activity in Pakistan.
I think Chinese position is very complex. If you recall, in the previous era when Taliban used to rule over Afghanistan, Chinese had entered into a written agreement with the Taliban government of Afghanistan that any terrorist operations in other areas could go on, but not inside China. And this was a written agreement which was reached between the two sides. So therefore, what one finds is that Chinese are directly trying to get access to various terrorist organizations in Pakistan. At the same time, they also are going to invest about $54 billion in Pakistan. So they cannot afford to have the Pakistan government or army, etc., running in a very difficult position. So therefore, what they are trying to do is to strengthen the government of Pakistan, at the same time also open a dialogue with the terrorist organizations. But who suffers in this bargain? Ordinary people of Pakistan. So the people of POK, people of Balochistan, they would be sidelined, and Chinese would insist that their engineers and others should be protected by at least 4 or 5 for each Chinese national. So this is the position as of now. But I must say that there is indeed pressure on Pakistan to behave like a normal country, so that Chinese can indeed put their $54 billion there. Of course, Chinese will not just give it as charity. They will have to pay back sometime.
Indeed, indeed. I want to take one of the points that Ambassador Shashank raised earlier forward. Commodore, the point of General Durrani is saying that Hafiz Saeed has lost his utility. Has he indeed lost his utility in Pakistan, and that's why some kind of action has been taken against him in the form of a travel ban and in the form of a house arrest?
I would say that actually there is a certain slight shift going on within the domestic context of Pakistan, and I think my other panelists have drawn attention to various aspects of that. And my own reading is that the way in which the Pakistani minister at the Munich conference, the interior minister, had actually classified or described Hafiz Saeed as the equivalent of a threat to Pakistan's national interests, and the fact that his travel protocols were placed under certain constraints, in a very gentle, mild way I would add, is perhaps part of the same pattern wherein here in Delhi, General Durrani has also drawn attention to the decreasing relevance or utility as far as Hafiz Saeed is concerned. Now, these are definitely a departure in terms of the public statements that are being made by either serving ministers or retired senior officials. And my reading again on this is that within Pakistan, after General Bajwa has taken over, there seems to be an attempt at trying to identify these individuals and place them under some kind of restriction. At the moment, it seems to be in a very, very kid-glove manner. And as far as this international pressure that we are talking about on Pakistan to comply, I would say that India has also contributed to this particular expectation from Pakistan. Because if you recall, for the last 6 months or more, wherever Prime Minister Modi has spoken, particularly in regional or global fora, he has spoken about terrorism. And again, it is interesting and instructive that the conference that General Durrani has come to attend is part of the IDSA's Asian Security Conference, where the focus is again on terrorism. So to that extent, I would say that within Pakistan, many voices have been raised. Perhaps this is a minority, because the politics of Pakistan is so radicalized. And for that, I think when anyone has any doubt about the degree to which Pakistan has got radicalized, you just have to recall what happened to Governor Salman Taseer, who was assassinated, and his assassin Qadri even now is being seen by large cross-sections within Pakistan's middle class as a hero, somebody who has defended Islam. So this, I think, is the greater danger within the Pakistan ecosystem, where the radicalization has moved in such a manner and so deeply that for Hafiz Saeed, the individual, and the Lashkar, the group that he heads, or the Jamaat, that is the new name that he's given, is something that has got very deep roots as far as the polity is concerned, and that to my mind is going to be the larger challenge for the Pakistani civilian government in particular, as also the military, if they decide to crack down on these groups.
Right. Yes, yes. You wanted to make a point.
I just wanted to, I think, we should not be unfair to our Pakistani guest, General Durrani. He's a good guy. He's known as General Shanti in Pakistan because he's always argued for better relations with India. It requires a certain amount of courage. It required courage then to say Kasam is a Pakistani, and it requires courage now, as Ambassador has pointed out, for a senior Pakistani retired military officer also, to say that, look, this is what happened. So to be fair to him, he's not said that Hafiz Saeed has lost his use for Pakistan. He said he's of no use. When you say he's lost his use, suggests that he had some use. He's not saying that at all. And secondly, to say that that only a minority is against terrorism in Pakistan is also incorrect. Majority of Pakistanis are like you and I. They're against terrorism. They don't want to be victims of terrorism. It's the minority which controls the establishment, the minority establishment, the ISI, the military, which may have some use for these terrorists. The Pakistani state may have some use. The Pakistani people have no use for terrorists.
Sure, indeed. You know, Professor, taking that point forward, you know, as far as Durrani's statement itself is concerned, he's made a statement on Indian soil, but is Pakistan going to take note of that statement, and will it do something in the near future?
In fact, prior to Mr. Durrani's statement, Tariq Khosa, also one of the Pakistani officials, he also had talked about the involvement of Pakistan Army and the ISI in the Mumbai attacks. So the Pakistani civilian regime and Pakistani civil society is quite familiar with the Pakistani involvement. If you pay heed to the discussions which take place in the Pakistani media, you find they often talk about the Pakistani involvement in the Mumbai attacks. It's a different matter that the Pakistani army and the Pakistani military pretends that there was no role which was played by Pakistan, and they only talk about the fact that you solve Kashmir and then everything will be all right. So one doesn't know that it's a chicken and egg situation, whether terrorism is the result of acrimonious India-Pakistan relations or it is the cause of India-Pakistan relations. So I feel that this is not a very solitary statement made by Major Durrani. I mean, many voices in Pakistan, and if you even read the statements, the book written by Hussain Haqqani, Shuja Pasha, you find that there are many references to Pakistan's army and military's involvement in the cross-border terrorism. So this is nothing, you know, very, very significant and a solitary statement made by Major Durrani. But it's a significant thing that he has made the statement on the Indian soil, And as our Prime Minister Modi has often talked about the fact that trade and terrorism and talks cannot go together, so it vindicates India's position, that it puts a seal on India's position that Pakistan has been involved in cross-border terrorism, and the statement made by a senior Pakistani ex-official vindicates that stand.
Indeed, indeed. You know, Bharat Bhushan, India has time and again from the beginning said that the Pakistani ISI and the Pakistani government were involved in 26/11 and have been involved in further terrorist attacks in India. But the point remains, you know, these statements aside, is India isolated as far as dealing with terrorism in Pakistan is concerned, or can you see any kind of a reciprocation from Pakistan in the near future?
Look, India doesn't stand isolated, first of all. Pakistan
In between India and Pakistan. I don't mean on the world stage.
No, not really. I mean, after all, even after 26/11, there was an offer of a joint investigation. After Pathankot, in which certainly the Pakistani establishment did not have any role, a joint team did come, including people from ISI. They were allowed into the Pathankot airbase. But perhaps there was complicity in the Uri attack, in the Nagrota attack. So there are some attacks which would have complicity of ISI. Pakistan uses terrorism as a tap. Okay, they want you to discuss all outstanding issues, and the core issue being Kashmir. If you don't discuss Kashmir, if you are not talking to Pakistan, you are not talking to Kashmiris, you will find terrorism goes up. They turn on the tap. When talks are going on with Kashmiris, with Pakistan, they turn off the tap. But once you create a Frankenstein's monster like Jaish-e-Mohammed or Lashkar-e-Taiba, all their operations are not, I would believe, sort of commanded by ISI. You know, we've seen in India when, after all, extremists here have also been created in Punjab and in the northeast by various agencies. You lose control over them. They also do their own actions. So I think that is the situation we find ourselves in today. The difference is that today the Pakistani establishment, for whatever reasons, wants to go against terrorists. I would think that if they are sincere, they would do it in two stages.
But how long will it last is another question.
In the first stage, they will go against people who are standing over their head and blasting them. Then they will probably target those who target India if they have given up their policy of using them for furthering the foreign policy goals. We would say give them benefit of doubt. Let's see how it goes. Why should I condemn them beforehand?
Sure.
Let's see.
Sure. Ambassador, what's the way forward? We've got 5 minutes left on the program. Let's talk about the way forward now. How do we deal with this entire situation at hand?
No, first of all, Pakistani leadership has to realize that it should try to stabilize Pakistan and have a peaceful atmosphere in the region. It should forget about taking over Kashmir in the short term. It has to see that in long term, if relationships improve between India, Pakistan and all the region, then quite likely Kashmir will become one of the areas of exchanges of trade, pilgrims, tourists and all that, as we are trying to do on the other side in our Act East and policy with the ASEAN countries, also a little bit with the Chinese. So I think this is what Pakistan must learn, that simply having the Chinese investment for the CPEC is not enough. Simply getting some money from time to time from the Americans to work against the terrorist elements and then again saying, oh, sorry, we cannot handle everyone together. So that is a short-term perspective. Pakistan has to go for a longer-term picture. India has given it a lot of possibilities, and I think Prime Minister, against the kind of opposition from the political parties, which said that Prime Minister was being very soft on Pakistan, he went out of his way. So I think time has come that Pakistan, now in the changed international environment and the situation of possibility which are there for it, it should really move ahead and take whatever partnerships it can develop in this region, South Asian region, and India should be prepared to do it at the diplomatic level, at the non-governmental level, and later on hopefully that if in case Pakistan can move ahead, then we will see whether the senior level dialogue also is necessary.
Indeed, indeed. Commodore, even if Pakistani government wants to move ahead, are some of the elements within Pakistan going to allow that to happen?
My short response is actually frank no, because this is what I was trying to allude to earlier. saying that there are some very strongly entrenched constituencies within Pakistan. Now, earlier I was saying that the majority kind of mood as far as the middle class is concerned is increasing radicalization. And I spoke about Qadri, the assassin of Governor Salman Taseer. I still maintain that the dominant constituencies within Pakistan that have a direct bearing on the policy towards India and terror, Afghanistan and terror, have gone in a certain direction. So therefore, any kind of quick change, I think, is unlikely. And I'm still of the view that if you look at Pakistan over the last 8 to 9 years, even the fall of General Musharraf, soon after the Lal Masjid kind of whole episode, was triggered because he was trying to crack down on these groups within Pakistan at that time, and you saw the backlash and how that panned out. We saw the experience as far as General Rahil Sharif is also concerned. I think earlier one of our panelists spoke about the Peshawar school attack, but they could not take it to its logical conclusion. Now, even now at this conference, which some of us have attended, the IDSA conference, you can see that the Afghan representatives are drawing attention to the same contradiction, that within Pakistan, certain well-entrenched constituencies, part of the military, part of the political establishment, part of the polity, are still convinced that they need to nurture and support, say, a group like Haqqani, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, or the Lashkar and the Jaish, as far as India is concerned. So I think when you say about the way ahead, my sense is it's unlikely that there would be any changes in a hurry. But yet, I think the Nawaz Sharif government, if it has the courage to take this forward, and General Bajwa is able to convince his own core commanders, as it were, that there needs to be a fundamental kind of rearrangement of how Pakistan is going to deal with these groups, the ideologies and the actual support to terror, then we might see a gradual change. At this point, I think, let's repeat the originals where we started, General Durrani's observation is not new. This has been said in the past, and he also said the Pakistani government, ISI, are not involved. He used the word 110%. He has really come here as a messenger of peace, as one of my co-panelists had said.
Indeed.
And I think
your
we
point
should
is taken. Your point is taken, Commodore. I have time for one final comment on the program. I'd like the professor to close the show for us with her concluding remarks. Professor?
Yeah, I agree with Commodore Bhaskar that religious extremism is a very potent force in Pakistani politics. In fact, the kind of Sharia interpretation which they want to be introduced in Pakistan, they know that that can not be achieved by democratic means, but can only be achieved by the usage of gun or by the suicide bombers. So this religious extremism, I think, is something which is going to be a very strong force to be reckoned with by India and by the international community. Somebody referred to the international pressures, but I think even Obama had put a lot of pressure on Pakistan, and there was a bounty of so many $1 billion on Hafiz Saeed. But that had no effect on Pakistan's endorsement of adopting terrorist means.
Indeed.
Because Pakistan is fully aware of the fact that US needs Pakistan as because of its geostrategic position and
completely out of time on the program, but Bharat
so
Bhushan just wants to quickly slip in a comment to end the show. Yeah.
I think the way forward is we should start talking to Pakistan. I think the window of opportunity will be from May to July. If we want, we don't want repetition of what happened in Kashmir last summer, that is the opportunity. And if the Pakistani establishment is moving in the right direction, I think by talking to them, we can encourage them to move forward in that direction.
Indeed. All right. On that note, I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Bharat, Bhushan, Uday, Bhaskar, Shashank and Umar Singh, thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things in perspective for us. See you again next time.